Mhm.
All right, everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So I had this experience. I'm teaching this other class on the order of Melchizedek, and one of the students there posed the question last week, which I thought was very intriguing. Last Tuesday, she said, we were talking about ascendance and how to raise your vibration and what you should be doing to elevate yourself so that you can align your chakras and go into the higher dimensions and all. She's like, well, aren't we already in the higher dimension? Yes and no. And there's a caveat with this. And it is that multiple parallel realities and dimensions are overlapping each other. And I will make the difference in a second, the differentiation between what is a parallel world as opposed to what is a higher or lower dimensional world. And I knew where she was coming from because in the light community, there was a misunderstanding of facts. The fact that at moment and sometime through channeling, the voices of the ascended come in and they begin to tell us, the 5Ds here, the whatever dimension they're coming from is already here and also. And while they are speaking, that is true. But it doesn't mean that this is going to remain as a permanent space for us to inhabit. Because if you look at the world, one of the things, the way I responded to her as I asked her, look around you. Does this world snow in Brazil, in 2 states, over 30 cities covered and blanketed in snow, over 1 foot of snow, in the middle of the summer in Brazil, where it's typically 90 to 100 degrees. Everything went all, one city went up to -5. There is nothing normal about this. Or if you look at central China, Zhengzhou, 3 dam breached. The whole city is devastated. Animal, livestock, plants. The flood in Europe, the flash flood that happened recently in Arizona. And so I can go on. The wildfires, I can go on. You're not blind, you can see it. And I asked her, if this is 5D, I want a refund because something is wrong. We are not there yet. At the moment, those higher densities touch down, but they get pulled out and other things, other densities are always coming in. So what's happening is that there is an overlap of multiple realities that are right on top of each other, occupying the same space. And at the moment, one of them will get stronger and that energy will dominate and will control, and it would seem that you shift into that dimension. And at other moment, it pulls and you go into the higher densities and there's a shift and you go. And at time for me, energetically, I feel like I'm completely schizophrenic. Because there are days where everything is absolutely phenomenal and aligned and beautiful. There are other days it's just the exact reverse, where you're asking yourself, what happened? How come it feels like I'm pushing this rock uphill, and every time I get on top, the rock will roll back and I have to keep going back and pushing it again? And thank God for my spiritual practice. Thank God for all the things that I'm doing on a daily basis, even on the good days or the bad days, to make so that I can maintain a status quo, not the status quo of the planet, but a spiritual status quo that can level me out. And thank God for the practice. And I want to make a differentiation between what I call a parallel reality, which is basically the way Master Dracul described it, is that it is lateral to us and it shows up in dreams of you traveling horizontally, either in a train, on a bus, or driving, you're going horizontally. Whereas a higher density, a higher dimension, shows up typically of you going up a hill. You could be driving, flying, or it could be that you're also in an elevator or you're climbing stairs. Or if you're descending, you're going into lower densities. And I want to differentiate that because they are not the same. Okay? We are trying to elevate, and the new earth, the movement toward the new earth is trying to elevate all of us into a higher density. There are lots of people on earth right now that are being polarized to choose a parallel reality, which is more lateral. Okay? And there exists an infinite number of them. And I want to clarify this because right now, the way the world is, particularly within, let's just take the narrow scope of the light community. There's a lot of people who are have a sense of that the truth and the insight and the download that they have, that they feel radicalized, and they have to go out and they have to go into a crusade to convert a whole bunch of people to the insight that they have, whether it be vaccine or no vaccine, whether it be politically, socially, or whatever it is that's the new download du jour. They feel obligated to be in a charge and to go out there and try to dominate and submit others to their truth. No true ascended master would ever do this. No true enlightened being would ever do anything like this. Whatever truth that you know, if someone else does not vibrate at that frequency, you let it go. It is not your responsibility, your duty, nor your burden to shift anyone, to move anyone, and to try to be God's assistant and try to elevate them into some sort of like higher consciousness. It's not your responsibility. The same way God was able to find you and touch you and change you, God is capable of doing this for everyone individually on the planet. Yes, we have a co-creative role to play, but the role is not about you becoming a preacher and go and stand on a soapbox or a street corner and begin to yell and scream to everyone. If anything, it's going to turn everyone off. And I've noticed, friends, people I know, people whose character I could have vouched for, I've seen many of them shift in that vein. And I still have hope that at some point they will get the spiritual maturity and self-correct and realize that this is not the way to go. But I have noticed this. And I have, there's a lot of bait on social media. There's a lot of times, even today, I saw somebody that I know that I care for a lot. He posted some crazy stuff again today. And I got so close to start typing a response. And I'm like, no. This is a bit, you're gonna stop this. It's gonna derail into something else. Because I was trying to just put a little hint of something else. He has to find his own way. It's not my responsibility to correct him. Okay? If he asked me personally, I would be happy to share information with him. But I'm sharing, he's seeing my page, he knows what I'm thinking. So if he wants to have a conversation, I don't have a problem having a conversation. But I'm not gonna go on respond to his comments as a way to engage him, to kind of like enlighten him to my truth. Because the same sin that I'm seeing in others, I would be guilty of it as well. Okay? And this is part of the emotional intelligence that one has to have to be able to elevate and to move into the next phase of our own personal and spiritual development. I'm sometimes shocked by the how triggered I can be. Okay, having done all this work on emotional intelligence, there are times I think I would be better than that. But there are two things that are going on. Everything that's going on right now is triggering all of us into what I call the bifurcation, that there is this choice between two things. You either are white or you're black. You're either light or you're dark. And there's no bridge that connects the two. And there's only two choices, and both sides completely convinced that the way they see the world and the truth that the so-called, in quotation, that they are perceiving is the only truth that there is, and the other side is saying exactly the same thing as well. And there is no connection between the two. And I'm here to say, as I've said before, that the bifurcation is a lie. It's not a choice between two things. Consciousness is way too complex to only have two choices. Spiritual consciousness is vast and infinite. There is an infinite number of choices and paths that we all can follow and grow into. There is at least a third path, a fourth path, a fifth path, but at least there is another path that does not involve the bifurcation. And this is where we can navigate ourselves toward the new earth and the higher dimensions, rather than us be stuck into this belief that the only way we can do this is by, again, be like, be on the seesaw and choose either this side or that side, the left or the right. Neither of them. In fact, I would say that they are opposite of each other, and in fact they are holding, they're balancing each other out. And the events that I mentioned before, the climate change event that are so unusual, and again, all of it channeled from 2015. All of them were there, and I remember at the beginning of December, after the channeling from the Galactic Region Council, I remember me doing a class where I said to everybody, and this is a spontaneous channel during class, that this year will be, if the last 2 years were about fire, this year will be about water and earth related events, like earthquake, volcanoes, and water. And this is what we're living through right now. Things falling from the sky. And so and the prediction, I have a weird relationship with this prediction. Because predictions are of two kinds. There are those that are potential for manifestation. When I connect to my guide, they often refer to them as a potential for manifestation. Okay? But there are those that are that I call, and those are more or less prediction. That if you were to change certain variable, it's going to be a soft landing, or it may not happen at all. There are those, on the other hand, that are omen and that cannot be changed. And the way my guides usually describe it, they keep talking about that future has already been decided and nothing can change it. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like the omen, because it's never about good news. It's always about some catastrophic, disastrous, event, jarring event that's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And I have to open my mouth every time and say this like I'm fear mongering, and I'm the bearer of bad news. I'll always, like every time I do a channeling, before I post it on the blog or I publish it out on mass media, I spend at least 3 days thinking about how people are going to perceive me. I'm already whacked out and saying all the crazy things all these years. Here goes Pierre again with this stupid nonsense, right? And so there's that part of, but somebody has to be the voice and say it. And maybe this is the role that I have to play in this incarnation for the rest of this incarnation. So I'm going to have to open my mouth and I'm going to have to say what I need to say in order for for people to be aware of what eminently is happening, right? So for me, what I consider to be the most important part of this is for us to begin to understand that these catastrophic climate change events that are taking place around the planet right now, i.e. snow in the middle of Brazil, flood all over Europe, all over Turkey. You Google it. Go if you're interested. It's a rabbit hole. If you start doing it, you're gonna go so deep, you're gonna get scared. But if you want to cursorily, give yourself 5 minutes, if you Google, you will see how many, floods, recent flood all around the world. You will see unbelievable stuff. There was a scene of Zhengzhou in China, that city that got inundated where 3 dams broke. And that entire region, by the way, that entire state, I think more than 15 dams have breached. Because in 3 days, it rained the amount of rain that for 1 year, in 3 days in the entire state. And so there was a scene where these people were in the middle of the subway with water all the way to their upper chest. And they had to be rescued and all that and so on and so forth. Terrifying scene as far as I'm concerned, because I'm slightly claustrophobic. Every time I know the train is going under the river, there's a part of me that I'm trying to block the thought of me being underwater inside a tunnel, with water on top of me, right? So what I'm saying is that we have to understand that these events are trying to refine our consciousness. They are not there to punish us. They are not there to cause us harm. They are not there to somehow take something away from us as a way of punishing. What they are doing is that they are giving us an opportunity to understand that the challenge or the visible external event is rooted into, it's not really what's happening outside, it's how I react to what's happening outside. That's the best way I can put it. So if I'm reacting coming from fear, and I'm anchoring survival, and I'm anchoring panic, and I'm trying to do X, Y, Z, and I'm trying to do all of the above, I am not reacting correctly to what's happening outside, because I am now letting the outside event take control of my emotional health and my emotional reactivity. Whereas it's not that I'm not telling you not to run if there's danger, if there's a fire, not to run. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there is a way to be alert to the physical danger and put yourself to safety, yet not let that event or that rush for you to get away from danger become a trauma that will ground deeper survival in 3D and keep you whole in the 3D reality. These events are the last imprint from the 3D world to hold us in the 3D reality. Now, out of all of that, some of us, hopefully all of you in the call right now, will understand that it is a challenge, it's an opportunity, that we will all elevate and we will all begin to see something else, see it as an opportunity for us to begin to have higher emotional intelligence, to begin to understand that I don't have to be in survival. I know this is gonna be safe for me. I need to move, but I'm gonna be calm about what I need to do. And more importantly, I'm gonna process the loss. And here is the biggest thing for all of us. This is typical survival. The biggest thing that the planet is experiencing now, as far as emotion is concerned, is grief and loss. You either lost somebody because of Corona, or you lost your job, or you know somebody that lost something. Opportunity, freedom, all kinds of things. You can no longer travel. It's grief and loss. And how you process that grief, And how you process the loss becomes the key to your elevation into the higher density. So whatever is happening outside is being created for my benefit. It's been created for me. And if I can elevate myself and begin to perceive it in that light, I will begin to perceive it in a completely different way. And it will begin to help me breach and create a bridge that will bore an opening into the heaven and connect me to the higher density I'm trying to reach. It's like a crucible of fire where these events that are causing, the external event that are causing me internally to emotionally process residual fears that are still existing in my subconscious mind, things that are buried so deep, so in the recess and the bowel of my subconscious part of me, that they begin to surface and roar in their head. And if I can find a way to take this lead and transform it into gold and give it an opportunity to rise to the surface as something else, then I will really connect to the higher density with complete confidence and, more importantly, in total certainty. And I will know myself, and I will identify completely with the world that I am hoping to help create. So if I can do this, I will completely transition, move into, and more to the point, after doing this, and to the degree that I'm anchoring this and I'm becoming more and more connected to it, and these events no longer affect me because I have somehow managed to create a buffer or a connection to the higher dimension that shifts me into processing everything faster. And the Galactic Region Council talk all the time about emotional, psychological, and physical agility, to be able to move through this emotion faster. And if I can do this, and it's not, and the way you do this is that you can't ignore what's happening. You don't do this by being stoic and pretend this is not happening because I'm all light. It's like the student of mine was implying in the class I was doing, that the higher dimension are already here. You don't need to do this. And I had to say to her, well, look around you. Does it look like it's a higher dimension? Have you looked at the news? Have you looked around you? Delta variant, this, that, or the other. I mean, you know, and she was like, well, you're right here. And so what I'm saying is that there is a part of us that can exist in a bubble. And that bubble is not real, because to surround yourself in that bubble and exist in that bubble alone, you're missing the opportunities that the universe and the earth is trying to create for you to really elevate. Because that little bubble where you're pretending the darkness is not there, the feeling, the grief is not there, the loss is not there. I'm okay, and you're pretending to be okay when in fact you're not. Whereas emotional intelligence implies, if I'm feeling the grief, I'm gonna go into the place of letting my whole body go into it. And I'm gonna sense it, and I'm gonna say to myself, okay, I'm feeling loss, I'm feeling grief now. What am I grieving about? And I have to say to you, grief as an emotion is experienced cumulatively, meaning that if, for example, I've had several people that died of coronavirus. So if I'm thinking of my friend that recently died, okay, in India, if I'm thinking of my friend that died very recently, the grief and the loss that I'm sensing or experiencing in my heart when I go into the space, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. This man was so vital. What a loss, what a great human being. I'm so devastated. And as I'm feeling this and thinking about my friend, every other grief that I had experienced up to that point opened up like an accordion. It's completely cumulatively experienced. And this is why people feel overwhelmed by that emotion. Because, and again, for those of you who took my emotional intelligence class, you know more or less how to do this, but it's just a reminder that a lot of times when we're feeling these emotions do not come alone. It's a combination of 3 or 4 different emotions that comes together. Because, for example, you could be feeling victimized by a situation. Let's say, for example, flood or fire or whatever, and you're feeling victimized by what happened to you. Okay, a lot of people who lost their home because of these events, either in Europe or in wherever this flood, or in China, they're feeling victimized by it. But you could feel victimized and be simultaneously angry. The same way when you're experiencing grief, there are 5 stages to grief. There is the denial, there is the anger, there is the negotiation, there is the depression, and finally, there is the acceptance. So you could be simultaneously in denial and also trying to negotiate at the same time. And because you have 2 or 3 different emotions that's showing up at the same time, you get overwhelmed. And the way I deal with this, with emotional intelligence, is that I ask myself, for example, for the loss I had from my friend recently, a few months back, about 3 months ago, I asked myself, what am I feeling? As I feel the grief in my body, where do I feel it? Is it in my shoulder? Is it in my gut? Do I feel it in my chest? Is it in my heart? Where do I feel it? Okay? Once I discover where I feel it, what am I feeling? And when I ask that question, sometimes I feel something so big and so enormous that I don't know how to process it. And when I get to the point of realizing that it's something tremendous, I then ask the next question. Is this one feeling, or is it a combination of multiple feelings? And if it is multiple feeling, what's the first feeling? The second? Are there any others? Because the way to tackle this with emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence simply means the management of emotion. So this is where you go deep into the feeling of the feeling, and then you, with your mental ability, you begin to communicate back and forth with no preconceived notion, and you let the feeling and the emotion lead you. So as I do this dialogue and I continue to talk, I see there are 3 feelings or 4 feelings, and I'm like, okay, let's deal with the first one. Am I feeling victimized? Maybe I'm feeling victimized. Or am I angry? Okay, I'm angry. Am I negotiating? In the case of my friend that died recently, the thing that was the most difficult part to me is that they were going there for medical treatment. And I remember specifically saying to them, because I'm an intuitive, and a lot of times I sense things in my body energetically without having no logical reason as to argument as to why it's not going to work. We're going to go to India, blah, blah, blah. And I said to them, do not go. I Googled a hospital in the state. I said, that's where you should go. No. There's going to be a kidney transplant. There's a hospital in India that specializes in this. This is where we're going to go. And they went to India, and he died after the transplant of COVID. And that's the part that begins now to bother me. I should have insisted more, because my whole body clenched when they mentioned they're going to go to India. It's like it seizes. You know how when you jump into ice cold water and your whole body clenched? That's what I felt in my body. My body knew, because energy doesn't lie. As a seer and an intuitive, my body knows more than I do. And most of the time, my mind, my mind is catching up several days afterwards. Most of the time, when I'm picking up things that are going to forthcoming for the planet and the world, my body is already aware this 2 or 3 weeks before it finally precipitates into my consciousness. And that was the part that was the most difficult part for me to process, because I know his family. I felt devastated. If I had screamed it loud enough, this is the one of the problem with people who are seers of truth. Okay, because there's a sense of responsibility. I should have done more, but but there's a part of me that knows better, that realizes, okay, it was his time. You gave the warning. They did not listen to you. It was his choice, and it was his time to go, and he was supposed to go that way. Let it go. But it took me a full 2 weeks to release this, because the guilt was still with me. I'm like, I should have said it louder. I'm being perfectly candid because I want you to understand the way I process these feelings and this emotion. And I was able to let go and move to the grief. Because again, this is the negotiation part for me. I was feeling, at first it was disbelief. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And the second part is the negotiation. If I had done this, it would have been better. If I had done this, and then there was the anger. Why would a doctor, all of it was happening, all three of them at the same time. Why would a doctor in the middle of a COVID outbreak do a kidney transplant where they're going to have to suppress your immunity to allow the new kidney to take? In the middle of a Delta variant COVID outbreak. And then I had to let go of all of this. I had to separate each emotion, process the first one, process the second one, process the third one. You cannot control it, Pierre. It's already done. Move on. Release and let go. I hope that my example was helpful. And I'm trying to illustrate all the time with actual practical things, because what I'm teaching is sometimes too abstract to absorb. And I want to make sure that I'm giving you an actual example so that you can actually know in your life how to process how to apply the same rule and the same principles. Okay? Now, my guides are also talking often about, the Galactic Region Council often talk about what you should be doing in order for you to thrive, aside from emotional intelligence. They talk about your relationship to your higher power. And that part is as important, as you know. And I don't mean by that just believing in light or believing in goodness and believing in, because we're all decent people, we are very sensitive, we're all intuitive. It's not just believing in just those things alone, but it's also having an intimate and personal relationship with a higher power. And considering that we're going into a higher density and we're moving vertically rather than horizontally, hopefully, it's because if you don't have that relationship, you will not elevate. It's like typing an address in Google Map or GPS to get the proper coordinate and direction as to where you're supposed to go. If you don't have that, because there's a lot of light workers that are lost, because the only constant and the only thing that will keep your compass straight, it's that relationship to what you would consider God or your higher power. So your God concept and your God principle has to be constantly and perpetually moving. What do I mean by that? It's not that the teaching of the church are wrong. It's just that the God and the God concept of our fathers and our forefathers are not enough. There may be a springboard, but you need to jump on the trampoline to allow yourself to propel and go to higher heights. And you have to allow your concept of what the creative principle or your higher power may be to be so expensive and so elevated that it's constantly breaking glass ceiling, and you're understanding that God concept in a constantly expanding perception. It has to be an emerging awareness, because if God is becoming, it cannot be a static point. It cannot be one thing. So if the God concept that you have is from your fathers or your grandfathers, it cannot remain the same. As you're moving into this 5D, 60, 70, wherever it is that you're going to end up ultimately, all the way back in the bosom of God. That's the ultimate aim, the return, the inhalation of God. And so for you to get to that point, you need to allow your connection or your relationship to what you think your higher power to be to constantly be expanding and popping open. You have to constantly allow yourself, because ascendance is merger with God. And if your God concept remains static, there is no ascension. So it should be something that will push you into a higher version of what you thought of a month ago, 2 months ago. And these things happen to me anyway during my meditations. When I make my connection by doing my spiritual practice, I do my connection with the divine, and I sit down and I'm in like I do my daily practice. I spend at least 45 minutes in meditation. And as I do this and I'm sitting down, my God concept, because I talked about this a little bit last week. The true ascended master exists in the border that exists between complete and total surrender and doing. Particularly now, there are so many loud and disturbing and chaotic events that are happening all around us. Unless you have a connection to that higher power and you bring whatever is the disturbance du jour that's causing you to be in agitation, and you bring that to your higher power. And the way I do it, I surrender the disturbance and how I feel about it into my higher power. I literally, like I took a rock and I'm throwing it into a lake. I surrender it completely. And as I do this and I let it go and I release it, it takes sometimes several times to do this. I do several breathing, deep breath, especially the universal breath. I do several of them, and I do it and I keep releasing, sometime maybe for 10 minutes. And ultimately there is a point where the emotional charge that I have about what I'm experiencing is completely disconnected to me. I become completely detached to it. And when that happens, I suddenly enter into a different space. Because at that moment, I am not doing. There's nothing for me to do. Because I gave it away. And I know I am safe because I am now in the presence of my God concept. and I'm completely supported in every way possible. And what usually happens when you're in that state, and a lot of you have experienced this before. I had a session with a client earlier, and we were talking about this. I had to remind her. I've been mentioning this for a while, but I'm going to remind the group again. What happened when you get into that state of surrender and you drop everything into the blessed field? You release everything into the blessed field. What then happens is that you become completely unburdened. In the Catholic Church, in the charismatic movement connected to the Holy Spirit, they call this state when you surrender everything. There is a period that happened right after the surrender that they call the rest of the Holy Spirit. It is literally a sense of release of all of the pain and the suffering and everything you were holding emotionally. There's a sense of release. And after that release, there is like a blank slate. And that blank slate is the emptiness or the rest of the Holy Spirit. And when you get there, it feels suddenly like your mind goes blank. Because whereas before you had a burden and you had a worry, you were concerned about that or the other, and you were able to manage to release it and you let it go. And all of a sudden you enter into a space where nothing, no thought, no idea. You think some people have even said to me, I think I fell asleep. I went somewhere, I don't remember what happened. I went blank. That blank is actually the sweet spot. This is exactly what's supposed to happen. People misinterpret that blank and thinking that they're doing something wrong. That blank is actually the sweetest spot because it's the introduction to the light. Remember the way the Buddhism described it. It's the indivisible emptiness and luminosity. That blank is the emptiness, the unburdening. And you may be there for 10 minutes. Sometimes 10 minutes can feel like hours. Sometimes you're there maybe for a half hour. You don't even know. And then at the back end of this, if you stay there long enough, I keep telling people that every mystic in recorded history has been trying to get into that blank. And when you get into it and you begin to say to yourself, nothing happened. Well, exactly nothing happened because it's the emptiness. This is exactly the point. You're completely unburdened. And then beyond that, if you sit within it, will come breakthroughs. Because the best way I can describe it, it's like there's an echo. So when you release the burden into that vast, endless emptiness, the blessed field, the nullifying frequency and vibration that will actually remove and miraculously repair the burden that you're experiencing will show up to you after the emptiness. That's the luminosity. And if you sit long enough, it will simply arrive. And the way it feels like to me, it's like a wave on a seashore. It's just wash over me. And I get this insight. I'm like, oh my God, I need to do this, that, or the other. And at that point, I snap out of it and I just go and I do. That's what I mean as a practical example of true ascendance as being in the border between surrendering and doing. Sometimes I take other people's burden into the blessed field. People I know that are struggling, that are asking me for prayer, this is the way I do prayer for them. I take their burden and whatever they are feeling, because Pierre is not capable of removing cancer, lupus, COVID, or whatever. I don't have that kind of power. But the field that I'm connected to has the power to do all kinds of things. And the degree of difficulty that someone is experiencing is none of my business. So whatever shows up, I take them into the field. And to the degree that I can really release it and let it go and throw it the way, and you've heard me say this before, what I really am, I'm not a healer. I'm a train conductor. And I take all of my clients to a train station that I know that they cannot access. And I push them into the platform. And the field does what the field does to them. And I wait for them. And when they are done, I bring them back. So if I can do this, and sometimes people are like, oh my God, you have, what's fascinating to me is that a lot of time after I do prayer or hands-on healing, whatever it is that I do for people, they're always like, oh my God, when the miraculous change occurred to them, sometimes it's instantaneous. They walk off my table and they were miraculously, all the burden will be removed. When that happens, most of the time I'm in shock. Because guess what? Pierre did not do it. The field did it. I didn't have to push energy and try to remove XYZ from them and do this. And I did none of that stuff. All I did is brought them to the station and let the field remove the burden for them. And if every time I'm able to surrender completely, and the biggest problem, particularly for the people I know very well, the biggest problem for me at times is for me to surrender. Because friends and family member, I care too deeply, because a perfect stranger that I don't know, I will let go and surrender in 2 seconds. It's not a problem. The people that I care for, it's another story. I get emotionally too entangled and too involved. It's too close to me, and I have a more difficult time to surrender. And that's the challenge that we all have when we're doing this work. So to the degree that I can release and let go, so the degree that instantaneously the miracle will manifest. Forget the secret. This is the real secret to manifest. It's that thin line that exists between your higher power, your connection to that station, that vertical station that you can go to. Surrendering and waiting for the echo to come back. Sometimes the echo comes back, I don't have to do anything. Miraculously, I've had so many people on my table that spontaneously got up and whatever their burden was, instantaneously taken out. Now, doesn't mean it happened for everyone, because there are other instances where they have a lot of vision during the healing, or I have a lot of vision, which means that the client is typically undeserving has a lot of shame, is undeserving of the instantaneous healing, and feel that they have to do homework 2, 3, 4 times in order for them to accept the healing. In an ideal state, everyone that I would take to that station would instantaneously walk out healed. But in most cases, there's a lot of homework assignment, because the person who is receiving the healing is not prepared to accept. It's too easy. It's too instantaneous. They're not prepared to accept it. Who's doing it? They are doing it. Their own shame is doing it. Not the field. The field doesn't want you to suffer. Suffering is an illusion. It wants to give it to you instantaneously and make the change. So it's to the degree that you're prepared to accept the change. And again, it shows up a lot of time in visions, vivid visions, and they're fast. They come like a flash. They're very fast. You know, did I see this? I get them. The client gets them. And what I do typically after healing is that we have what I call a debriefing moment, where we have a conversation about what just happened, how do they feel, etc. And if, for example, my client has a vision and I have a similar one, that means definitely is something that they have to resolve for the healing to become permanent. Now, in all cases, when I take people to that station, there is an immediate amelioration. Immediate. But for it to become permanent, the person that I'm taking should be able to have, if they have, to the degree to which that they have shame, it's the degree to which they will resist instantaneous repair. So if they don't have shame, or rather if they have removed the shame and they feel deserving of the, I've said this before, like when a client gets up from my table and said to me, I cannot believe that the pain in my back is gone. The pain is going to be back in less than a week, because they cannot believe it. Whereas the person who accepts it, thank you, to get up, oh my God, I'm so grateful, thank you, I feel so much better. And they walk out and it's permanently in place. And I know all of you are healers, you've experienced this before. I'm going to stop here for a second. Any questions, any comments?
Hey, Pierre, it's Jason.
Hi, Jason.
Hey there. I want to say, first of all, this is really powerful information. So thank you for sharing this. This is my first time with you on a Sunday, so I'm excited to experience it. This may seem like a remedial or basic question, but you know, I get this question from a lot of people that I know and work with. I'd love to hear how you define it. How do you define ascension?
Okay, that's a great question. Okay, ascension is an elevation in consciousness that involves typically an ego death. You cannot remain this, if you're going through the process of ascension, you have to shift who you are and you have to morph into a different being. Now, there's already an ascended or elevated version of us that exists in 4D, 5D, and so on and so forth. In other words, our ascended self already exists. What we have to do in 3D, or what happened to us in 3D, is that we are disconnected to it. We don't have the awareness that that part of us already exists. So the process of ascension, by whatever mechanic, and there are multiple paths for you to get there, but the the mechanic is doing nothing more than helping remove the false narrative that is telling your ego that you're disconnected and you're separated, and allowing you to accept the truth that there is no separation, that those part of you that exists in 4D, 5D there is no schism, there's no break. But at every step of the way, you have to experience an ego death. You have to drop something. The way the Dalai Lama describes it, he says it's the absence of existence and self-identity. And I think that's a very powerful thing. Existence as you know it has to completely disintegrate.
Right. Yeah,
Right?
I think that's beautiful. So in a way, you're saying we're already there, we're already ascended.
Yeah.
We have to allow ourselves to get there.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. That part of us is already there, but we somehow fragmented to it, and we are experiencing life in a very, the way to describe it is like if we are a piece of glass and we have to take a hammer, you shattered it and it broke into a bunch of pieces. We are experiencing life as one of the pieces rather than the whole thing. And ascendance is experiencing life complete.
Got it.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful description. Thank you for that, Pierre.
Not a problem, not a problem. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have one more while I got you. Is so I like when you talk about the crucible of fire. Would you say that all of the existence that we're experiencing now is one big crucible of fire, made up of little crucibles of fire?
I would say so. I think so, Jason. I think, and the interesting thing is that we are not all going to the same place. And this is the part that's the hardest for us light workers, because we have friends and family members and we want them to be in the same bus with us. But the energy doesn't care about the love connection and the entanglement that you have. It's a question of matching frequency. So as we're all, the whole planet is going through this. And people that I know, that I love, and I've said even to people in the class, where I'm going, my love for you cannot take you there. You got to apply yourself. You got to do the work. That's the only way. Because when the galactic equator crossing happen, and we're going to have to traverse this space to where the dimensions are gonna literally diverge. It's a matching frequency. And if you didn't do the work, and the amount of work that needs to be done is Herculean. So I'm going to just say that there, even for me, and I'm Capricorn, I'm extremely disciplined. Even for me, it's intense, okay? Because discipline is my middle name. But what I can say to you is that if in the channeling, the last channeling I did with the Galactic Region Council, in the last sentence they said, even if you do 50% of what we've told you, you will find your way into the new earth. You don't need to be perfect, but you need to do enough so that the energy that will begin to separate, what they call in the Galactic Region Council, the Great Harvest. If you go up around farms, if harvests are being done, things are going to be separated. The apples are going in one bucket, the oranges are going somewhere else, the grain are going to go, the potatoes, you got to separate. And so it's that kind of mentality to understand, and that's the part that's emotionally the hardest. because we want to take our family and a loved one, and a lot of our loved ones have already committed to other realities.
Got it. Beautiful.
Yeah, and it's painful to experience because I can see it in my own family. She's not going where I'm going. That one is not going where I'm going. I can see it already. And there's nothing I can do about it. Again, surrender. There's nothing I can do about it. Because if I go there, try to convert them and trying to go on a crusade and tell them they should do it, they're going to resist. They're going to do the exact opposite. And it has to be a free choice, right?
Wonderful. This is a great answer. Thank you, Pierre. I appreciate all the detail.
Not a problem. Not a problem. So I wanna talk about some of the strategy for us to strive during the shift as a way for us to find ourselves in a better place. We spoke about a few of them already. The first one being, of course, emotion. Cultivate your relationship with your creative principle. The new earth, I'm reading from the channeling in December of last year. The new earth is a higher dimension. Therefore, holding a God concept of a fixed creative principle as a singular point in time and space is limiting. Instead of making God in your image, try to expand it into the understanding that it may be a vast, infinite, and endless field of benevolence and superconsciousness, an emerging existence that is unlike anything that you know in 3D. We spoke about this just now, and that the final destination of your GPS is as far as you're going to travel. And I'm when I do my meditation on a daily basis, like today, I had a major breakthrough about my God concept expanding into something else that I did not see. But for 3 months, it was the same. And all of a sudden, it's like, poof, something happens. And for that to occur, you have to be in a state of waiting for something to emerge, something to come toward you, a state of expectation. And when you're in that state, you're perpetually listening to whatever wants to render or what's want to emerge in front of you. And your God concept is allowed to expand and grow. Item number 2, become emotionally intelligent. When you're triggered by fear of survival, instead of emotionally reacting from the known emotional repertoire, try to acknowledge that the fear is not your identity. It is a temporary condition that you need to understand, learn from, and process. Do not push it away. Instead, go into the fear and watch it like you would do a play. Ask that you be shown its root cause and find the vulnerability that is camouflaged in it. Now surrender this vulnerability to your expanded God concept and ask that this burden be taken away from you. This is another way to move through agility, emotional agility. Any question, any comments about this? All right, item number 3.
Pierre?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I had to unmute.
No, please.
I'm just curious because, you can quit it in 2 ways. You can quit it, like you said earlier, what I'm feeling and it's more like a dantian, you know, where you feel it in your body,
Yep,
as opposed to maybe putting out query to the blessed field.
yep.
Do you find that these are two separate exercises for you, or do they kind of blend for you, or you just know which one is more applicable?
You have to know which one is more applicable for what you're experiencing at the time. When
Okay.
I'm feeling things that are overwhelming and I know it's more than one feeling, I cannot use the technique I just read now. I have to use the previous technique I mentioned before, which is to isolate it and ask if it's made of more than one feeling and find what the first and the second and the third is. That's the way to go.
Right.
Because when it's too big and too overwhelming, when you try to identify it and you say, what am I feeling? And you can't even identify what it is. It's because it's not just one feeling, it's a combination of too many.
Right. Right.
Right? So in that instance, the first conversation we had a little bit earlier, that's what I would follow.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can identify it as one feeling and one emotion, then the second what I just read is what I would do.
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Surrender your entire identity into the emerging paradigm. All ascension comes from an ego death. It is the phoenix rising principle, the rebirth into a new existence. For you to evolve into a higher dimension, you have to let go of who or what you think you are. You have to become unattached to everything that exists in your life and embrace this great emptiness and luminosity that is beyond the known. It is in that vast, unknown, and emerging space that the new earth exists. You cannot intellectually find the new earth. You can only feel your way into it. This is an important sentence because many people think, and I've seen so many people in the light community thinking that if they were to intellectually do this, and they're into the mode of doing, God's assistant mode. I have to do this and I have to do that, and if I do it, this, that, or the other, this is the way it's going to show up, and the new earth will show up, and we will all do. This is not what the channeling is saying. You cannot intellectually find the new earth. You can only feel your way into it. So it's through the emergence of what's becoming that the new earth will become visible to us. And that emergence starts first by you allowing your God concept to perpetually grow and emerge. Because if it's not happening, your GPS will remain to the same destination, and you will not have a new coordinate to put into your GPS. And the end of the channeling reads, "Beloved, we urge you to follow this practice, for even if you master 50% of it, at the time of the galactic equator crossing, you will find your way into the promised land. It is our great hope that all of your words have been of help. We in the Galactic Center want to cultivate in you the possibility of a great and abundant harvest. We can only influence, but we cannot act for you. As always, the choice is yours. We are the Galactic Region Council, and thank you for this opportunity to share." So I wanted to go over these items because it's a good thing to be reminded every once in a while, particularly in a week like this week where so many things happen in the planet that were absolutely terrifying and loud and cacophonic. It's good to go into a space where you begin to remember that these are the things that needs to happen in order for me to go through this crucible and let all of the raw of the metal, the fears, the sense of separation, and all of that to be purged from me so that I can become the true goal that I am within. Any comments, any questions? All right. Let's take a 5-minute break, go to the bathroom, get some water, because we have a long closing meditation to do. Okay? 5 minutes. Take a very deep and slow breath. And as you inhale and exhale deeply and slowly, allow the universal life force that permeates everything to enter into your lungs. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And let your soul and your awareness drop in the middle of your chest. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Let your entire awareness drop in the middle of your chest. It is as if you are experiencing the world from that point in your body. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Let your head and your heart sync with each other. Realize that you can perceive the 360 degrees all around you. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And notice what you noticed. Become aware of all of the emerging sensations perceptions and feelings that are moving all around you. In complete neutrality and unconditional love. Notice what you noticed. Allow yourself to become increasingly aware of the vast and infinite continents a super intelligent quantum field of infinite possibilities that envelopes you. And that extends into infinity times infinity. I become aware of all of the fears, the resistance, and the undeservedness that are blocking the expansion of my God concept. I now surrender all of these attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into this great emptiness. And endless luminosity. I become aware of all of the fears, conscious, unconscious, that are connecting to climate change. And I release all my attachments, fears, and control that are connected to this. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I become aware of all of the loss and grief that are connected to the transition into the new earth. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness. And endless luminosity. I become aware of all health struggles and issues that I may be experiencing at this time. And I surrender all attachments. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I become aware of all desires to rescue friends and family members and accelerate their spiritual evolution and growth. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I am at rest. For I am unburdened. I stand in spiritual rectitude and verticality. And let the blessed field echo back to me the nullifying frequencies that will instantaneously and miraculously liberate me. Let a cascade of healing and perpetual renewal. Grounding me. May I become the active anchor for the manifestation of God's plan on earth, may the peace the serenity, the liberation, and the ascendance that I know pass on to everyone in my circle of influence. Let there be light. Fiat lux. I am that I am. Hosanna into the highest. Hosanna into the highest. Hosanna into the highest. Take a very deep and slow breath. And whenever you feel ready, you can open your eyes. How you all feeling?
Very good. Thank you, Pierre.
You're welcome. I want to say thank you to everyone for listening to me. I don't want to, I know you're at peace now. I don't want to disturb it too much. I'll just politely just say good night. And I'll talk to you next week. And I want to thank you to all my Patreon supporters for listening to me every week. And I bid you all good night. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Deep love.
Yeah.
Good night. Good night. Thank you.